Hi, I'm Dave Miller, Director of College Counseling at Stevenson School in Pebble Beach, California, and I'd like to welcome you to the third in a series, a 16-part series called College Prep for You. This series is designed to educate both parents and students in the Monterey County area about the possibilities for college, and we covered the thing sort of soup to nuts. In our opening show, we gave a sort of a preview of the year. Our second program, we dealt with a college panel. It was shot at Stevenson School. We had a variety of college admissions officers and some of our students, and about 200 parents and students, and we ran the gamut again and talked about a lot of things, general things, specific things about the college process. In future weeks, we'll talk about financial aid, about the college essay, about paying for school, about recruiting, about filling out the application, lots of specific things. Today's program, we're going to talk about, since it is November and it is the tiny window of application time for students to apply both to the Cal States and to the UC system. We're going to talk about the two major public systems in California. They're totally different, and our goal will be to let you know how they're different, how they're appropriate for you. We're going to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about both of them. And we have two special guests here, both recent graduates, class of 05 and 06. And one went through the Cal State system and is conversant with there and actually works at Cal State Monterey Bay, Matt Daines. And then the other young lady works with us. In fact, she was on the panel that, if you may have seen that, she was a basketball player at UC San Diego and just recently got out. Now she works for Revolution Prep, which is an SAT preparation company that serves students in the Monterey Bay area. So we look forward to learning from them. We will also have two PowerPoints, one on the UC system and one on the Cal State system. And then we have a sort of a new thing. We're just trying this. Just recently I came across, I Googled a site and I saw at a national conference a group of young people out of college put together one of these sort of glitzy MTV generation types of programs on colleges. And they've gone into all of the states and as many colleges as they can. And there are probably about 20, 25 in California that they've done. And we're going to look at two of their short little programs, little 5 or 6 minute programs, one on Cal State Dominguez Hills and the other is on UC Davis, just to give you a flavor of what those schools are like. Then we're going to just dissect those and talk about them and try to make some sense out of them. So before we get started, let's have you meet our guests. We'll start out with Matt Daines. Welcome. What can you tell us about yourself?
Thank you, Dave. I'm honored to be here and I appreciate you inviting me on. I worked at CSU Monterey Bay for 3 years. I work as a recruiter. Mm-hmm. My official title is admissions counselor. So I also review the actual applications that come in, look at the transcripts, and I'm just hoping to provide any expertise that I can here tonight.
So everything we want to know about the Cal State system we can get from you, right?
That's right.
Okay, and we're going to find out the differences with how you look at an applicant versus how the UCs do, and then also maybe touch upon how it's different with the private schools as well. How'd you get interested in this?
I actually started out, some people that were in one of my classes, I saw them as tour guides on the campus. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, that sounds like a fun job. You get to be out and talking to people. And I applied and became a tour guide at CSU Monterey Bay. And through that, working my way up in that office, I've been given this good opportunity to go out and talk to people in the local schools, tell them about college. Mm-hmm. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a common background for all of us. I was an Orange Key guide when I was in college, and then I worked as an alumnus recruiter, and then I ran the alumni interview committee for my school on the peninsula here, and got in touch with Stevenson at the time. I was in public school, and then I ended up at Stevenson because of some of the work I'd done with some of the people there. So it's sort of a tight-knit community, and I wouldn't say it's incestuous, but it's people know each other, and there's a lot of cross-fertilization, a lot of career changes, and it's a good job to be in. Kimberly Buffum, tell us about yourself.
Well, I am from Southern California, new to the Bay Area. I went to UC San Diego, and as you said, I played 4 years on the women's basketball team there. I had a wonderful time at UCSD, and I'm excited to share a bit about my experiences there, both as a student and as an athlete, and the process that I went to enter into the UC system. And I'm really glad to be here.
Okay, so I'm going to ask each of you this. How did you end up at UC San Diego then?
I had a unique situation because of the basketball. I was recruited, and that kind of helped narrow down the search in terms of thinking of colleges. But I had a choice between UC San Diego and a couple different NAIA schools, smaller Christian schools. And after going on campus visits and kind of seeing what a day in the life would be like, UC San Diego kind of captured my heart. So
So is that the only place you applied to then? Or?
Because I did early decision, it was the only place I actually did apply to. But if it wasn't for basketball, I had a big old list of places where I wanted to go.
What were some of those schools?
UC Davis, USC, it's a family school. I was into Cornell, and some of the smaller Christian schools were Azusa Pacific, Westmont, that kind of thing. So.
Okay, good. So you sort of had kept an open mind, but basketball sort of led you there.
Basketball led me there. I wanted to play, and UCSD was the right choice for me.
And you'd do it again?
I would absolutely do it again.
Yeah. Now, which was more important to you? Which did you get a better experience with, basketball or the school?
That's a good question. I think playing basketball helped make my experience at the school. Being so involved in things on campus and kind of helped establish that niche. So something I do recommend, whether it be a sport or some kind of club or something like that, really enriching yourself in something, I think really added to my experience.
And you were from Southern California?
I was already from Southern California, so it was far enough away where I was going to college, and but I could still go home for a Sunday meal with the family, and they were able to come watch me play in my basketball games.
About 100 miles down the pike, then you were okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So not too far away.
Not too dissimilar from Matt. You're sort of a local guy, made good.
Yeah, well, I grew up I was born here in Salinas, grew up in Greenfield, went to King City High School before Greenfield had its own high school, and I'm very close to my family, so it was an important decision for me to kind of stay local and watch my brother and sister do their thing in high school. And I'll be honest, I was apprehensive about going to Monterey Bay. This was in 2003 before they got their accreditation.
Still having some of the growing pains there.
Yeah, but it worked out great. I thought I was going to go into teaching, follow my father's footsteps, but it's worked out well for me. I like counseling because I can work one-on-one with people, and I don't, it's very similar to teaching, but it affords me the opportunity to, use my skills where they fit in well.
Yeah, so one of the things we like to do in this series is just tell people's stories. In fact, that's what I do for a living. I write people's stories when I write the letters of recommendation, and I get to know the families well and the students well, and everybody has a different story, and they're all good stories, and they're all appropriate stories, and they all lead to the right place. And that's basically been a mantra that we've had in this whole series, is to find the place that's the right fit for you. And obviously the basketball helped determine it for you, and being local helped determine things for you. And so it sort of takes a person that's a little mature, a person who knows himself well, to put those other things aside. Like, I'm sure you thought about Cornell for a while.
Yeah.
Boy, should I go to an Ivy League school? How can I pass that up? And in your case, it probably was not a good choice. California or freezing cold snow.
Right.
And in your case, you're thinking, well, do I go to CSUMB? They're not accredited. Nobody knows them. No name brand value here. Right. Is it worth staying close to my family? So how do you make that ultimate decision before you go?
I think you have to check in with people that know you well, especially as a young person. We're still a lot of times finding who we are, really. So it's good to check in with people that have been through the process, and kind of check in with your people that are your family members, people at the school. That's what I recommend students do. And also, I ask students if they can create a list. What's your number one important thing to you? Is it sports? Is it location? Is it cost? And based upon that list, hopefully that helps the students decide as well, knowing what's important to them.
Another little route that I wanted to touch on, we'll do this a little bit later as well, but you went the route of a transfer. You started at MPC, right?
That's correct.
Tell us about that.
Well, for me, the decision to go to a community college was based on the fact that I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career, and I couldn't see the point in spending the money. For me, basically not knowing how long it was going to take me.
Sure, those could be 2 very expensive years. You go to Cornell, sort of fiddle around and see what you want to do, and those are about $52,000 per crack. That's $104,000 worth of making up your mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, good. Sounds like you two guys had just the right things happen to you. And let's sort of march on now and find out what the Cal State system is like and what the UC system is like. And I think we'll start with this little sound clip that we have on, in fact, a video clip on Cal State Dominguez Hills.
Hey, what's up? I'm Nicole Aaron.
And I'm Shayna, and you guys are watching University TV,
Today we're at California State University, Dominguez Hills.
home of the Toros.
Come join us on our campus tour.
Cal State Dominguez Hills is located in Carson, California, in the greater Los Angeles region, just minutes from the beach to downtown LA and Southern California's entertainment centers and attractions.
If you drive within 30 minutes, you can go to the beach. Within an hour, you can hit the mountains. Southern California is wonderful. It's pretty much always warm here.
We certainly have Hollywood and all the hot spots, so there's a lot of fun things to do at Cal State Dominguez Hills and in the Los Angeles area.
The park-like setting of the Cal State Dominguez Hills campus sits on 346 acres, providing plenty of places to study or lounge outside and enjoy the California weather. And all buildings are only a short walking distance from one another. You'll also find pedestrian paths lined by eucalyptus or other shade trees.
Known as the College on the Hill, the campus makes good use of the terrain, with many buildings built at varying elevations. The campus's main level is the second story of most buildings, and bridge walkways provide a seamless connection.
State Dominguez Hills has recently been listed one of the safest Cal States in the system. It's an amazing place to be. It's a beautiful campus, and we're very, very proud of it.
The university enrolls about 12,000 students per semester and is one of the most ethnically and culturally rich student bodies in the U.S. No one ethnic group on campus is in the majority. The student body is 70% female to 30% male.
Well, after graduating high school, I had my options. Let's just say that I'm going to different schools. And I decided to come here because I want to be a teacher. And Cal State Dominguez Hills has one of the best teaching programs for teaching credentials in the Cal State system. And that's one of the big things that pulled me here.
The admissions requirements for Cal State Dominguez Hills are the same for the CSU system. We also require students have a specific GPA requirement that corresponds with their SAT or ACT score. The higher your GPA, the less weight we put on the score. The lower the GPA, the stronger that weight needs to be.
Students with GPAs below 2.0 are not eligible for admission.
For California residents, the average full-time annual fee for the public university is $3,400, not including the cost of books or housing. Out-of-state students pay about $400 extra per unit. The university offers many financial aid options, including scholarships and grants.
Cal State Dominguez Hills gives you your choice of 45 bachelor's, 21 master's degrees, and 10 teaching credential certificate programs.
We're planning a project in underwater crime scene investigations. Our students are doing is they're developing algorithms to teach this robot to think, to identify shipwreckage, explosives, and so forth.
Some of the students' favorite majors include liberal studies, business administration, digital media arts, child development, and nursing.
People who already have a bachelor's degree, they can enter into our entry-level master's program in which they would get the generic nursing training, which would allow them to become an RN, and then at the end they come out with a master's as a clinical nurse leader.
Want to work in television or the motion picture or music industries? Cal State Dominguez Hills Digital Media Arts program successfully prepares students for careers in those fields. The legend holds true. There's a ghost in every theater. The Dominguez Hills spirit comes to every play, opens the elevator doors, and wishes the cast good luck.
The university also has the largest master's degree program in conflict resolution and peace building. Plus, the orthotics and prosthetics program is one of only 7 such programs in the nation.
We have an orthotics and prosthetics program that teaches students how to build prosthetics as well as to build orthotics.
With 687 faculty members, the university has a student-to-faculty ratio of 23:1.
We have professors that come in early, stay late, and work weekends. We have professors that are involved with their students and get to know them on a first-name basis.
The university has 11 men's and women's Toros athletic teams, which compete at the NCAA Division II level.
The Toros boast 23 conference titles and 3 national championships. On-campus housing at Cal State Dominguez Hills is unlike most college residence halls or dormitories. The complex consists of 22 two-story buildings with 1, 2, and 3-bedroom furnished apartments, all with full kitchens. The apartments were originally built to house athletes for the 1984 Summer Olympics.
I do currently live in campus housing, and it's a nice experience. I don't have mom there to tell me what to do, but also it gives me the opportunity to interact with people on a more intimate setting.
Dominguez Hills students can select from 60 student-run groups to join or participate in, from cultural and special interest organizations to professional service and honor society groups. There are also 5 fraternities and 8 sororities on campus, some of whose origins have Latino or African American beginnings.
There's a lot of things students can get involved in. They can obviously get involved in clubs and organizations, sororities, fraternities. But we do other things. This week we're doing a dodgeball tournament.
Addicted to reality TV? Well, here's your reason to get off the couch. The Associate Students Incorporated put activities together for their students every year. Today, The Amazing Race.
Where are they now? Some notable alumni include Danny Grissett, a pianist-composer who has worked with people like Herbie Hancock and Prince, Niecy Nash, an actress whose television credits include Reno 911 and Clean House, and John Langley, co-creator and executive producer of the classically entertaining Cops.
One word for summarizing Casa Dominguez Hills would be home, because it is a home for me.
If you're looking for a friendly, student-focused university where you won't feel lost and it seems like everyone knows your name, be sure to check out Cal State Dominguez Hills in the heart of beautiful Southern California.
Thanks for joining us here in Carson, California.
On our campus tour of California State University, Dominguez Hills.
Bye.
See you next time.
Well, Matt, what do you think? Does that look like a Cal State to you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it showed a lot, you know, in a little bit, and I think that you know, each student would have to check that out for themselves. Go to Cal State Dominguez Hills and get a look for that. But everything I saw made sense to me. Yeah,
good. Well, let's take a look at this methodically here in our PowerPoint, and let's sort of break it down into little segments here. The little bit that I've taught myself about the Cal States, and I've been on lots of these campuses and certainly talked to a lot of people who graduated from there, but I didn't know this. It's the largest system in the world. I mean, that's huge. I sort of thought UC maybe was, or maybe the New York State system, but Cal State, biggest college system in the world. 23 campuses. We're going to show you what those look like, and they're spread out through the state, largely in cities, but they're everywhere. 450,000 students. 500,000. That's unbelievable. Of course, we have 35 million people in the state, 35 million in the state, so 450,000, real quick math, that's about 1 out of 7, 1 out of 8, I guess, people. A lot of students. 47,000 faculty members, so that's not too bad a ratio there, 1 out of 10 or so. And this is, I'm sure they have more than 2.5 million alumni, but this is since the 60s. And of course, a lot of these have just started since the 60s, but that's a pretty big group. And basically they exist for giving a bachelor's degree and master's degrees. They're pushing in the direction of PhD and ED, Doctor of Education and Philosophy and Education. And that's sort of a new thing. The UC system has sort of had a stranglehold on these graduate degrees, you know, the professional degrees, the biz school, the law school, the medical school, the PhDs in the liberal arts and the hard sciences. But the Cal States are going in that direction. There's been a little tension there. So I think that's one thing that we're going to look forward to in the next few years. Okay, a lot of specific things. They're large and comprehensive. That means they've got a little bit of everything. And if you go to one of these schools, you don't have to leave if you change your major, if you change some of your directions. And again, we have to remember that students are going to change their major 5 or 6 times. They're going to change a job during a lifetime 7 or 8 times. I've even heard more than that. And they're going to change where they live. They're going to change their partner. So remember, college is to get you to get a match, you know, to find out who you are, to try to craft the person you want to become, and to be prepared to land on your feet like the proverbial cat when you go through these changes. Usually they're in, well, they're as small as 850, and let's see if our guests know which campus has 850 students. Do you know?
That would be Cal Maritime.
That would be Cal Maritime, located up in the Bay Area up there, sort of like their mini version of the U.S. Naval Academy. They're usually near cities, big cities, Bakersfield, San Jose, obviously Los Angeles, San Francisco. And they attract what are called non-traditional students. Matt, let me put that ball in your court. What's a non-traditional student?
Non-traditional student could be anyone that has a migrant background. You know, their families, you know, travel every year between here and Arizona. Mm-hmm. It could be student with disabilities. Also, returning adult student. Now that we have a 4-year university here in Monterey, we find a lot of people in this area saying, hey, I want to get my bachelor's.
Yeah, and it's one of the
so-
reasons that Cal State Monterey Bay was placed here, because we had the land at Fort Ord, and also we've got that sort of older population. They work in the tourist industry, the government industry, and then they want to get back to school. So it's an older population, probably instead of when they graduate, they're maybe around 28 or so, as opposed to a UC system regular college, 23, 22. So that's a non-traditional student. Usually a little more of a commuter population. So you see these big parking structures on the campuses. People are living nearby. They've got to work to help pay for it. These are sort of some anecdotal feelings that I have, as well as some descriptive things. Some things you can put your hands around. For sure, they cost less money. $17,000 or so to go to Cal State Monterey Bay.
Correct.
And I think the most expensive one is Long Beach. Very, very expensive. They also have some things that normal, average, I probably shouldn't use the word normal, but the typical college doesn't have. They're very specific, very utilitarian, very much based on things that people need. For example, there are Aggie schools, there are nursing schools, architecture. We just learned in that video that you can do orthotics and prosthetics. You're certainly not going to do those things at Berkeley or UC San Diego. So they're very practical, and people get hard skills. They can get out and get a job. They can pay taxes and pay the governor back for some of this tuition that the Cal States and the UCs cost. So the cost is another way they're different. A little under $18,000, certainly under $20,000, whereas the UCs are pushing about 25 grand these days. And the private schools are really horrendous, 50, 52, I've heard even 54,000. So a big difference for the public. Now, this is the site that one would go to. You can just Google this, go to CSU Mentor, or go to Cal State, any ways you can get to this. But this is their main hub for all of the campuses, and this is a leaping off point for you. Matt, do you want to sort of talk us through this? What do you see? What could we point out for people?
Okay, I want to talk about this site. Once again, it's csumentor.edu. No matter which campus you're applying to, any of the 23 campuses, this will be the website you go to. For seniors specifically, you have until November 30th to go ahead and log on this site and send in your application. One thing that you can do on this website that's good is you can explore campuses, because it is $55 for every application you send out. What we find is that a lot of students send out 5 or 6 applications. That adds up to $300 right there.
Absolutely.
So it's good to know.
Plus, you're sending your scores to each one of those campuses.
Exactly.
That's another, what, $8 or something to
Right.
send those?
Right. So we'll want the official SAT or ACT scores. One thing I'll also tell seniors, make sure you fill it out thoroughly, especially in the sections of the grades. I'm one of the people that looks at that, and every year I see a lot of really great applications come through, but for example, they don't show that they're planning on taking that final semester of English. We assume that they are because they've gotten good grades in all the other semesters, but the fact that they don't put that, they get sorted into an incomplete application pile and get reviewed later. So just little things like that. Fill it out thoroughly. You can explore campuses on there. There's financial aid information. Pretty much anything you want to find out about the Cal State is on that website.
Yeah, I looked at it a little bit, and they give lots of tips about the application process itself. There's some information about financial aid, about how you fill out the application. There's a really nice Q&A section that we're assuming people know nothing, especially if you're a first-time applicant, your parents didn't go to college, or you're the oldest in the family. There's lots of stuff. There's a big learning curve that goes on here, and people like you exist to take away some of those fears, and this site and these sites are wonderful for that. Now, you mentioned 4 or 5 applications. Is it going to help me to apply to more than one school? Do I have a better chance?
Well, we admit, at the Cal State, we admit people based on their GPA and their test scores. So if you have a good GPA and a good test score, we're meant to be accessible. The Cal State is supposed to accept the top 30% of high school graduates every year, as well as transfer students. So this notion that the Cal States are hard to get into, I'm trying to dispel that a little bit, because hey, if you've worked hard in high school, we have a spot for you. Maybe not at Cal Poly, one of the harder Cal States to get into, but at one of the schools in the system.
Yeah, and I think that's a major difference that we want to project today. If you go away from here with just one piece of information, know that the UCs are designed for a certain echelon, if you will, of students who've got some more honors classes, more AP classes. They jump through a few more hoops, maybe a little higher test scores. But the Cal State system is basically designed for people who graduate from public schools in California. Right. You know, we used to say, well, anybody who can, you know, who graduates with a C average or better, you can get in. That's still partially true, but that's sort of moved towards a B.
Yes, definitely.
They like to have B students, and it's competitive. I understand this is going to be the first time in years that students who meet all the requirements, they meet what are called the A through G requirements, are not going to have a space in the Cal State system because of the cutbacks, because of the money. And that's pretty terrifying to think that we don't have room, and we invest more money in education than any other state, any other institution, any other political group in the world, really. In these two systems. So it's last year got pretty bad. Like, I understand that San Diego State had like over 60,000 applications. The UCs have just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of applications, as do the Cal State system. And now some kids are being told they just can't get in. And we'll talk about these impacted campuses and some reasons why a little bit later. I want to focus on some of the admissions here, some of the points that we want to make. Highlight, these are intended for everybody in California who graduates. They've aligned recently the A through G requirements with the UC system. They've used that for years, and we're going to talk about that. But basically, they want to make sure that you have enough English, enough history, enough science, math, and so forth. And they want to compare apples to apples, so everybody has to jump through those same hoops. We stress to our students that you cannot have D's in those classes, and if you do, you must get rid of those D's, either in a summer school class or an online class or whatever. Do you guys ever make allowances for D's over there?
We do. We try and work with the students as soon as possible. Number one, I recommend that they make it up at the actual high school if they can. That offers them the opportunity to have it removed from the GPA. Right. And actually erased. The other option is community college, right, which is great. One semester at a community college counts for a year in high school, right, with honors credit. So that's a great option, and you get credit for those units once you go to college.
Exactly, yeah, and you can get through college faster, you can save money. This guy, Matt, is here, and people, his cohorts, his office, they are here to help you, to make it work. You know, all three of us are here to let you know that you can go to college, you can make it work. It sounds tough, the money sounds horrifying, but it can be done. Just like what was Obama's campaign, we can do it, or yes, we can. We're here to say to you, yes, we can as well. Right. So getting back to our slideshow here, no D's in classes, standardized test scores, and a GPA. And there's a sliding scale, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So there's a minimum total score that you need, and it's pretty much data driven. They look at some other things, but basically they look at numbers here. So if you're a 3.0, the good news is you don't have to get bogged down with all these standardized test scores. There's a place for you with a 3.0, and if you don't have a 3.0, then you have to have higher test scores. Good news, no essay, no three essays or little questions or answers, no recommendations from teachers and counselors. They're certainly less selective than some of the private schools, and most of in fact, all of the UC system. Most Cal States are accepting over 50% of the people who apply, and it's even higher that with some of them. Now, with the exception, the caveat is some of these impacted programs, which we'll talk about in a second. We noticed last year at Stevenson that we had several kids not get into San Diego State and Long Beach and Chico and some of these other places, which in the past were just a given. And it's a numbers game, and it's also an impacted campus game. So when we say something is impacted as a program or as a campus, Matt, what do we mean?
What we mean is it's a numbers game, like you said. Okay, for example, Cal Poly, for their engineering program, let's say they have 10,000 applicants for their electronic engineering program. They only have 500 slots for that. Well, out of those 10,000 people, 5,000 were eligible to get in by their own, hey, if you meet these requirements, you have a spot here. Well, it's become so competitive that they have to find other ways to select beyond GPA and beyond test scores.
Yeah, and so I may be an appropriate candidate for electrical engineering. I personally wouldn't be, but I'd be able to put the last guy in the world for that. I'm an English guy. But if I'm qualified, I just can't go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Maybe I have to go to Cal Poly Pomona, maybe another one of the state schools. Maybe I've got to go to the junior college route, but I can get there. One of the things we tell, I want to tell you and we tell our students is, if you want to go from here to there, you can go. You might have to go a circuitous route. And that might mean job, it might be grad school, might be another college and transfer, but you can do it. But because there's such a crunch these days, it's pretty tough to do exactly what you want to do when you want to do it. Okay, so there's an impacted campus and an impacted major, and we're going to talk about some of those in a second. And then there's the other route, which the route that you took, the community college transfer. Yeah. What would you say is the ratio of community college to starting out as a freshman?
Actually, the Cal State accepts more transfer students than it does first-time freshmen. That's an agreement we have with the government. Yeah. It's about 60-40.
Yeah, and that's another difference probably with the UC system. UC system starts with more freshmen, I think, and fewer transfers. I think it's probably about 3,000 or so for most of those big campuses for freshmen, maybe about 2,000 or fewer for the transfers. But don't quote me on those.
If I could say one thing too about that, for the transfer students, they actually have a better rate of acceptance.
Oh yeah, don't have to worry about those test scores.
Right.
Plus they're older, they know the game, they know how to study.
So I don't want to make it seem, I think a lot of us, I at least, when I was younger, community college, I worked way too hard to go for community college. But for a lot of students, it's a great option.
Yeah,
so
and great teachers there at MPC, and well, of course you were there, so you know.
Yeah.
Okay, there's an eligibility index. We want to explain this, and they take this is data driven. They take you by certain numbers, and if you use the SAT, you have to take your GPA. Let's say that it's a 2.9, and you multiply that times 800 and add your SAT. Your SAT score could be, let's say, 950, and that gives you your index. All right. Now, if you use the ACT score, you're still using your GPA, but you multiply it times 200, and then you add 10 times your ACT, and that also gives you another index. And these are a little different, so let's look at them. The bottom line is 2,900 to get into the Cal States using the SAT. Now, this is without the writing component. Right. And if you use the ACT, which is based on a perfect 36 rather than a perfect 1,600, and again, no writing, the index is a lot different, but they're absolutely the same. They're coincidental, and there's no problem. What can you tell us about that index?
The best thing is for students to just do well in their classes, do well on the test. I don't want, we'll run the equation for most students. We'll handle figuring out the index. I just want them to do well in school.
Yeah, good advice. Let's not complicate things. You take care of business and they'll take care of business. Okay, let's talk about some of these campuses might be a little tougher, a little higher standards here. Cal Poly, we talked about, that's probably the flagship of the state institutions. Cal Poly Pomona, probably because of their engineering and architecture. San Diego State, business. Cal State Long Beach, that's the biggest school, I think 37,000 down there. Cal State Fullerton, really good baseball, good theater arts. So they're a little tougher to get into. The impacted programs, business, architecture, these are all over the state. Nursing, kinesiology, film and media. These very specific esoteric programs are tough. Here's a state map, and you can see the campuses, 23 of them all over the state. So you don't have to go too far. You can get isolated up there in Humboldt and be all the way down near the border in San Diego. But they're fairly easy to get to these places. And again, some of these are commuter schools. This is another type of a map geographically showing the thirds, the north, the middle, and the south. And of course, the two Bay areas, the Bay Area rather, and the San Diego area, and then Los Angeles area where a lot of the people are. Obviously more campuses there to serve people. In the north, I just sort of brainstormed here a little bit, and this is what I think of when I think of Humboldt, the forestry up there, and you can be a forestry major. Cal Maritime, you can be a ship driver, you get a license, and you can be a captain, make lots of money. San Jose State is the heart of Silicon Valley, so great engineering, computers, electrical engineering, great internships there. Chico, sort of party school, and Dennis Lennon, one of my favorite TV guys, went there. And lots of good things up there at Chico too. A little isolated up towards the border and inland, a little hot, but pretty good place. Monterey Bay, when I think of Monterey Bay, I think of new, vibrant, young, state-of-the-art teaching pedagogy, state-of-the-art equipment over there, and a capstone project. What is that?
The capstone project is an opportunity for the student to highlight everything that they've done in their college career.
It's sort of like a thesis.
Yeah, and it's great for if you're going into your master's work. Yeah. It's kind of laying the foundation for that. And so everyone that's graduated from our school, it's their capstone is cataloged in our library. Yeah. And so it shows all that our students have done.
San Francisco State, or Cal State San Francisco, film, media, theater, really good for that for the city. East Bay used to be called Hayward State, up near Oakland. And then Sonoma State, that's one of my favorites. That's wine country there. And then Sacramento, public service, a lot of internship, a lot of things right near the state capitol. Down south, the school's Long Beach, really big school, quite impacted, got rid of their football team a few years ago, presidential scholarships. Cal State LA is not UCLA. Fullerton, great performing arts, also great baseball there. San Diego, that's probably the most popular one of the hardest ones to get into. Dominguez Hills, we just learned prosthetics, orthotics. Pomona's got the other architecture program. And then Northridge, radiology, a lot of health things there. Cal Poly, this is sort of a hybrid. It's a little different. It's 6 colleges there. You have to apply directly to the college. You have to apply and start in your major right away. It's hard to transfer there. This is where we teach our farmers, the Aggie industry. You've got to declare a major. It's difficult to switch, and little different expectations for Cal Poly. They really don't align themselves totally with the Cal State system, or the UCs. I think that's why I call them a hybrid. Much different expectations, and they're one of the best schools in the country. Year after year, they're rated as the best master's degree granting program in the West. And a beautiful campus here in the valley south of us. They also take about 6 years to get through there. The kids don't like to leave too much. Okay, what do the Cal States cost? Between $17,000 and $20,000. I think the most expensive one is just under 20 grand, and Cal State Monterey Bay is about 17. Again, it differs by where you are, what the location is, the cost of living, what you're paying for on campus, and so forth. You need a FAFSA, that's the free application for federal student aid. We'll talk about that in a later show. There's also merit aid for a variety of things, for first-generation students, for athletes, for things that they want to get on campus, for people, specialties they want on campus. Okay, big red flag here. I just read about this in the paper just yesterday. We heard from the gubernatorial honcho, the governor, that he's going to cut back in lots of ways, and one is in education. And we're freezing lots of money to run the government here, and that has huge implications for schools, because that's mainly what we pay for in California. So some kids will not get into the school that they qualify for. And it'll be the first time really in history that eligible students are going to be shut out from the Cal State system. And that's sort of a bad thing. Okay, to close this up on the Cal States, you can Google the Cal State Mentor or go to this site. Should be no problem. You can call Cal State and call the junior colleges, and they'll get you on this, or talk to your counselor at school. Good luck with your applications to the Cal State system. And I'm not sure I had planned to show this UC Davis thing, and I've got 5 minutes out of that, and I think there's more things we want to say about that. But imagine you're watching a videotape on UC and you see that wonderful campus up there. We might show one of those in a later program, but I want to get right on with the Cal State system if I can. But while I'm switching the PowerPoint, Kimberly, let me put the ball in your court. Awesome. What are the best things about the UC system that you know about?
The best things about the UC system? Well, how long do you got, Dave?
Just a minute or so here.
I really enjoyed going to the UC system. Much like a little bit about Matt was saying, is there's a spot for everyone. If you meet the requirements, you are guaranteed admission into one of the UC schools.
But not necessarily San Diego. Not
necessarily San Diego or Berkeley or UCLA or one of the higher ranked schools. But there's going to be a spot for you in the UC system, and I think that's wonderful. Giant campuses, very unique and different at each school site. So there's something for everyone out there, and I like that.
Good segue to my first point here.
Well, thank you.
Again, this is they're a large, comprehensive research system. Now, in my sort of frame of reference, the Cal States are much more practical, utilitarian. You get up and go and take care of things. The UC system is philosophically driven, a little more academic, a little more philosophical, a little more research. They're creating knowledge. They're producing future scholars. I don't want to go too much further than that, but there's sort of a difference there, and I don't want to create an elitism or a selectivity here that there shouldn't be. Okay, they're big schools, art, science, engineering, lots of specialties, business, architecture, tons of things you can do. I think they're a great bargain for the buck. Even though they're more expensive than the Cal State system by about $7,000 or $8,000, they're way cheaper than these private schools, and they try to do this wonderful private school approach as much as they can. They're intended for the top 12% of the students in California. They look at, they provide lots of things, big time sports, lots of speakers, activities, clubs, a wonderful, wonderful experience in the UC system. And here's sort of a cattywampus picture here of the state, but you can have an idea here. You can see not quite as many campuses. In fact, there are 9, and they're around the population centers, basically San Francisco, LA, and San Diego. And they're basically in 3 tiers here. UC Berkeley is obviously the #1 public school in the world. It's the flagship, it's the hardest to get into. UCLA is the #1 school for applications in the world, and it's just a tad behind Berkeley. Certainly people love to go there, it's a great campus. And San Diego, where Kimberly went, it distinguishes itself by its residential colleges. And these schools are pretty close. You basically have to have about a 4.0, and this is an adjusted public school 4.0, where they take into account the honors classes and so forth, and a 2060 SAT. Those are the 3 scores. That's pretty hefty. And that's not saying that everybody at those campuses have those scores, because they can accept way more than the 25% that they do accept. But they try to have these campuses represent the state. So you better have some pretty good scores, pretty good numbers to go here. Okay, some of the less selective schools, the 3 in the middle, UC Santa Barbara, and I always associate with them marine biology. UC Davis, where my brother went. They've got an Aggie school, a vet school, wonderful graduate programs there. And then UC Irvine, we just visited there not too long ago at Stevenson School. Lots of science there, medical school, a lot of international students, really focused academic kids. Now, a little more forgiving acceptance rate there, 40 to 60%. A little more forgiving GPA, 3.7 to 3.9. Now remember, this is not everybody's inflated GPA. This is the average of everyone here, and it takes into consideration APs and private schools, public schools, so forth. And then the SAT is a little less, about 1900, 1950. You can feel comfortable. Doesn't mean you're going to get in, but you can feel comfortable applying with those scores. Now, the least selective of the UC system, UC Santa Cruz, just north of us. It's been around for a while, and I think of resident colleges just like at San Diego when I think of Santa Cruz. Great campus. In fact, it's my favorite campus in terms of beauty and the smallness and close to the ocean there. Gorgeous up in those mountains. UC Riverside, maybe the ugliest campus, and pardon me for saying that, but it is the smallest. It's the most like a liberal arts school, and they've got these unique programs there, like a 7-year undergraduate and med school, which a lot of kids try to get into. So there are good things and bad things about every campus. And then the new kid on the block, which is UC Merced, and it's still growing. I'm not sure they've got credentials yet, but it's certainly much easier to get into UC Merced, although they do reject some students. But these lower 3, the easier 3, they're accepting about 70% of the kids, and about a 3.5 GPA and an 1800 or so in the SAT. Okay, what's good about this whole system? Well, it's comprehensive. They do lots of things, and they're uniformly good. Very weak departments here. A world-class facility and faculty, and the bricks and mortar, as well as the people. They're putting out research and creating knowledge. You can be very proud of this state system. The locations and the campuses, I think, are pretty. I mean, UCLA is gorgeous. UC San Diego is also gorgeous. A lot of people love being at Davis near the mountains. So that's a good, strong point. Mainly Division I sports. Some have Division II, but big-time sports. They recruit, and you see lots of pre-professional athletes here. And I think they do a really good job with diversity. I think maybe not so at some of the campuses. I don't think Irvine is quite as diverse as it should be, whereas Berkeley does a really good job with that. Davis is maybe not quite as diverse, but I think the UC system in general does a really good job with diversity. Cost obviously is, compared to the private schools, about 25 grand, very positive thing. And then the networking. If you want to stay in California, probably a good idea to be part of the UC or Cal State system. Okay, what's bad about this? When you get size and you're large, sometimes it can be impersonal. You can get lost, and that means you can't maybe get some classes, you can't get somebody to write a rec for you. It's not a small liberal arts school, so you're gonna have to give up some things. Class size, I'm sure you guys both had classes. Well, maybe you didn't because you went to MPC and you had those small classes there and missed that and jumped right over to the upper class schools. But Kimberly, I bet you had some big classes as a freshman and sophomore.
Oh, absolutely.
How big were they?
Some were as big as 300 students.
Ouch.
Yeah, and that's a huge transition when you're coming from a high school where you have 35 of your friends there.
And then senior year, junior year, what was it like?
That's when you get into more of your major classes. So it would be 30 to 40.
And you graduated in 4 years?
4.5.
4.5.
Basketball kind of slowed me down.
Okay.
But I'm still proud of it.
You can. I understand you can graduate in 4.
Yeah.
The UC system doesn't, or the Cal State system doesn't produce 4-year statistics. They usually produce 5-year statistics, and even Cal Poly they'll produce 6-year statistics, because that's about the average for kids down there. And that's fun. I mean, if you're working, you're paying for it, you make it happen. Heck, I'd still be in college if I could be. It's a pretty good gig if you can get it. So the graduation rate varies from between 50% and 80% based on how many years you take. The first 2 years can be pretty ugly, big classes, finding a hard place to live, parking the car, all sorts of things like that. Again, negative things about the first 2 years at a big school. And then I think the lack of consistency and homogeneity of the student body has always been a bug for me. I mean, you have some really super bright kids, and then you have some kids that you wonder, how in the heck did they get in here? So I think the UCs have a little way to go there to get the consistency of their clientele here. Okay, admissions to the UC's minimum requirements are the A through G requirements. They try to do this holistic job of looking at the whole person. They really pay very close attention to the curriculum that you take. And I'm guessing you took lots of AP and honors classes there.
I did.
You cannot have Ds. In fact, they don't like to see too many Cs. So this is basically an A and a B place. And the standardized test scores, SAT 1s and the 2s, or the ACT with writing. And you have to have some pretty hefty scores. They look at leadership. They look at your activities. They look at the context from which you came. And that could mean you could be a first generation student. Your parents couldn't have gone to college. Maybe you're the only child in your family going to college. You're a certain socioeconomic level. I'm guessing that probably didn't apply to you.
It didn't. Yeah. It did not. But they do a great job of trying to accommodate special circumstances in their analysis on the students that they're reviewing.
Because they want the UCs to reflect the people in the state.
Absolutely.
Good thing about them. Okay, a couple of admission points we want to stress here. This is the month to do it, both for Matt's school and Kimberly's schools. You got to do it by the 30th. There are some optional start dates in the spring and the summertime for Cal Poly, in the spring for Berkeley, but you don't want to rely on those. The UC people tell us if you apply to more than 4, and it costs about $60 a piece, that you have a better chance to get into the system, not necessarily UCLA or Berkeley. There's one uniform application, just like there is for the Cal State system. There's also a thing called the ELC program, and I'll get to that in a second. And you have to remember to send your test scores separately. Your counselor and the school and mom and dad are not going to do that. You've got to take care of that. When you take the SAT 2s, doesn't matter which ones you take, but you have to do 2 of them. And if you choose to do math, then the math must be the 2C. They no longer honor the 1C. And the last safe date for testing is December. So if you haven't signed up for that December date, you need to get out and do that right away. Okay, these A through G requirements. A is history or social studies. They want you to take 2. They would like 3 years. English, 4 years of English. 3 years of math, they would prefer 4. Lab science, just 2 years of lab science. Many kids have 3, and you enhance your position if you have more. Foreign language, 2 years. And then visual or performing arts, 1 year. And then they also want to see some electives, which normally you would have. Okay, they have an essay or personal statement, unlike the Cal State system. And they've cut that down to about 1,000 words. It's really, really important. This could be the tiebreaker. Do you remember what you wrote about, Kimberly?
I think I wrote about some of the challenges I faced being a team captain during basketball.
The sports thing,
but but it is truly important to put a lot of time and effort into the personal statement for the UC system.
It's a huge thing, huge thing, and it's something you can control.
Absolutely.
They want you to come alive in your essay. They want to see the person jump off the paper, and basically what it does, it supports or augments the rest of your application, and it tells more about your story. They don't care too much about the content, about the grammar, the writing. They want to know what you're like. And remember, they don't have interviews, and they don't take the teacher's letters and my letter, so it's a way for them to learn about you. Total of 1,000 words, and that can be tough in 3 questions to figure out those 1,000 words. These are the prompts. The first one is about your academic preparation. The second is about your potential to contribute. Now, that was in basketball for you. It could be in your service to community. It could be as a minority student, whatever. And then the last one is open-ended. You can talk about just about anything here. And how you divide your 1,000 words into those prompts is up to you. Some people suggest 600, 200, 200, it's up to you. A couple more points that are important to keep in mind. There's a self-reporting transcript, just like the Cal State. In other words, you have to put down your grades and classes, and they check that later. They obviously can't lie about those things. Another interesting point is they don't take pluses and minuses. So if you've got lots of B minuses, voila, they become Bs. If you have lots of C pluses, they become Cs. So it can be good, can be bad, depending on what your scorecard is. You will be notified, honors and AP classes, huge bump in the public system, private system. If you have a 3.0 in a public system, in an honors class, suddenly that becomes a 4.0. So that's why you've got lots of people running around with inflated grades, and that's why it takes a 4.0 to get into some of these UC systems. You'll be notified March, April at the latest, and then you've got to sign on the dotted line by May for all of these schools. And then the summertime is when they do all this verification. This is some of the work that Matt's doing all the time, making sure that you're not telling little fibs there. Okay, if you take a language and your native language happens to be, say, Korean, they count that 800 just like they would for anything else. Little benefit for our international students. You want to do this application online. When you do it, you'll find out that each high school has an approved list of courses, and there's a little pull-down menu. It's really easy. In fact, I've applied to the UC system. I do it as a way to guide our students, and we have this evening meeting. We all bring our laptops, and I put my application on a video screen, and I just go right through as if I'm a student, and there are like 7 or 8 parts of the application, and you can do it all like in about 45 minutes or so if you do your essay aside. In fact, they tell you to do the essay on a side and then cut it and bring it in. But you can walk through that, and it's pretty easy. But this is the site that you go to, UC Pathways, or that if you can get that HTTP site there. This is what it looks like. Is that what it looked like for you a couple years ago? They haven't changed it too much.
Pretty much the same.
Pretty much like this is called Pathways. The Cal State one was called CSU Mentor, and it gives lots and lots of information about applying to college just in general. These are the sections of the UC application, and you cannot go to the next section until you get this first section done. And I love that because you can't make mistakes.
Right.
And sometimes it's frustrating. It gives you these little red flags. Go back and do this, you knucklehead. So you can't make mistakes. And also, it'll force you to check the whole application before you send it. And don't think that it's done just because you think you finished. You got to send it, get an electronic receipt. I presume that's true for the Cal State Mentor.
Correct.
As well.
Yeah.
And for all these applications, get a receipt, make sure that it's all done, and then send it off here. Okay, we've sort of rushed through that UC system, lots of stuff to talk about them, but I wanted to jump back to Kimberly now and tell us what it's really like. I can talk about it, but tell us what it's really like to go to the UC system. You were there.
Well, I can speak specifically about UC San Diego, where I went, and one of the biggest things I really loved about it is that they do have the separate colleges, so it kind of gave the feel of a big-time campus. You have 25,000 students there, it's giant, tons of stuff going on, but you also get the experience of kind of a smaller.
Did it really feel? That's what they champion. That's what they purport to do. But
yeah.
Did it really feel small?
It did to me. I lived on campus for 2 years, so having the same general ed classes as some of the same students every time, and eating breakfast with the same familiar faces, it did kind of bring it in a little bit. Where I went to Muir, and there was 6,000 students there. So it's still.
Okay, so what does that mean? You went to Muir. The public doesn't know what that means.
Muir College. It's one of the 6 colleges that they're divided into.
And you picked that, or they picked you?
I picked Muir because it had a better social atmosphere, and the dorms, I had a ocean view from my dorm room. So
now, what was the philosophy of Muir now? Aren't they like the outdoorsy people, the John Muir, the Greenpeace, all that stuff?
Yeah, they're more so that way than the other campuses, and their general ed requirements were very transferable for me. I was a psych major, so I was able to knock out gen ed and prereq for my major with a lot of the same classes. So.
Okay, so this is their way of making it a small campus, and,
Yes.
and UC Santa Cruz does the same thing, but you're not going to go to a USC football game and cheer for Berkeley at UCLA against them, are you?
No, I truly missed not having a football team. That was one of my biggest negative points for going to UCSD. I'm a huge football fan, so not having that was kind of tough, but
so you have
it's trade-offs.
You have to know what you're willing to take, and I call them non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Like one of your non-negotiables was being a point guard.
Yeah.
Now, would you have played point guard at Berkeley or UCLA?
Absolutely, if I was good enough.
No, yeah, but that's it. But could you have played there?
No.
Yeah.
So
right.
you have to weigh the good with the bad and make what's going to fit best for you. And if foregoing a football game or two allowed me to play 4 years of a college sport, it like you're saying, non-negotiable.
That's another way to make a big campus small. You find your little niche, and your niche was the basketball
Absolutely, absolutely, and it gives you a belonging. It was wonderful. They have a great Greek system. They have a bunch of clubs, theater, whatever it is, finding your little niche will really round out the college experience.
Yeah. Let's talk about academics for a second. Everybody says, oh, geez, the UCs, they're the flagships, they're the public Ivies. UCLA, San Diego, Berkeley, they're in a class by themselves. You obviously can do the work. I mean, you're getting into Cornell and all these other places. You're basically an Ivy League student. You choose to go to the UC system. Give us the nitty-gritty here. How tough was it?
It was tough. It was tough, but absolutely doable. It's a huge jump no matter where you're going to go to college. From a high school course to a college course, due to the reading and the size of the classrooms and the impersonal aspect of it, being one of 300 students, your teacher knows you from Adam. It was a big jump, but in terms of the coursework itself, it's completely doable.
Okay, let's think. I want both of you guys to think for a second. You're going to tell me 3 great things about the Cal States, the UCs, and 3 negative things. Get your thinking caps on. I'll try to help you a little bit.
Okay. Want to go first?
Matt, we haven't talked to you for a bit.
I'm ready. I'll start with the negative just because I don't want to focus too much on that. The negatives is, as I see people not being able to finish in 4 years.
Okay.
Those overcrowded classrooms at some of our CSU campuses.
Mm-hmm.
And then, maybe not being because they have to teach to everybody. Maybe you get lost in there somehow.
Okay. Okay. What are the good things?
The nice thing about the Cal State system is for your first degree, because I'm expecting most people these days to get a master's.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing about it is it's affordable.
Okay.
Okay. You're gonna have a lot of opportunities to do hands-on training, to actually get out there and get experience, and we're close to you. There's a Cal State close to you.
Quickly, your 3.
I'm going to steal his negatives. Big class sizes. I'm going to say kind of selective and hard to get into.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only going to give you 2 negatives, and that UCSD doesn't have a football team.
Yeah.
Positives, prestige. So on some of these, they're really well thought of, and being able to graduate from something like that. Big exciting sports teams like UCLA, like Berkeley, Davis, the ability to make your own being and getting involved and being part of a huge campus.
Sounds like we have 2 satisfied customers here.
I'm satisfied.
Well, we've spent quite a bit of time with the UC system and the Cal State system. We hope you have a better idea of what these 2 wonderful systems are. We're just lucky in California to have these options for us. The best thing is to know yourself, find out about these schools, and then try to get that match. Remember, college application process is a match to be made. It's not a prize to be won. I'd like to thank you again for joining us today, both the parents and the students, and we look forward to you joining us at the end of the month. We do this every 2 weeks. I think it's the 25th. We're going to be talking about financial aid. I'm Dave Miller, the Director of College Counseling at Stevenson School, and I'd like to close with my mantra. Remember, it's never too early to start thinking about college, and it's never too late to get started. Have a good day.